So here we're going to look at the properties of the sine function. I've drawn the graph into our grid for 2 periods or 2 cycles, and we're just going to look at some, properties around it, starting with the maximum value. So that should be pretty straightforward. The maximum value is just kind of the highest point that the sine function reaches, and I think if you look, you'll find that that highest point happens at 1. So the maximum value of the sine function is 1. And what about the minimum value? Well, that's easy. Just take this line and bring it down, and you'll notice that the lowest point is -1. So I'm going to write that over here. Minimum value is -1. Now next we have some new terminology which you may not be familiar with, which is the amplitude. Now the amplitude is just really the distance from the middle. And when I say middle, I mean it's kind of intuitive where that might be. The middle being kind of like the symmetry point of that curve. You know, there's kind of like a symmetry going on here in that this part is reflected down here, you know, kind of skewed a little bit, or down here, right? So the amplitude is the distance between that line and the highest point or the lowest point. And in this case, our amplitude is going to be 1. Now the domain is just like we learned before, all the values for which the function makes sense. And in this case, all real numbers. So I'll just write all real numbers, or NOS for short. The range is all the values for which this function takes on in terms of the y's. And in this case, you'll notice that we go as high as 1 and as low as -1. So for my range, I'm going to write in set notation, y is a real number such that y is between -1 and 1. The period, well, it's going to go from 0 to 360. In other words, how long does it take for one cycle to repeat or to happen? And in this case, it's 360 degrees. Okay, let me do this a bit higher, from here to here. And by the way, you're going to find that when we do more trig graphing, that the periods can be shrunken, they can be elongated, it varies. So for my period here, I'm going to have 360 degrees. And finally, the sinusoidal axis, I've kind of referred to that before. This line in the middle, okay, that kind of reflection point, if you want, of the curve, is our sinusoidal axis. So in this case, we're going to have y equals 0. So it's just the equation of a horizontal line where the graph, in quotes, reflects. Okay? There you have properties of sine.